is it? Well, it turns out it's inequality, and inequality causes
Ashley
crime
King,
because
can
it
you send
literally
me
makes
some
us crazy.
information?
We are
How you
wired
doing,
for
sweetie?
fairness. If you don't believe
On
this,
the
walk into a
eviction
preschool
moratorium
class
in
with
Tennessee.
a couple of dozen
If you can, just
3-year-olds,
any
give
information
them a
or
pile of
someone
cookies,
to
and give
speak
just
to
one
about
cookie
it.
to all the other kids.
Someone
And
who's
watch
been
what happens.
impacted by that. I would really like your help on that. Okay? Hey, Brian Martin, how you doing? Everybody, we're going to be talking about the vote. And, you know, they're doing something else, which is interesting. Turns out down in Nashville, Ashley, last year they had these civil rights protests, and Homeland Security and the Department of Safety of Tennessee compiled dossiers, secret dossiers of those who marched. Wow. I mean, down to who they were dating. Unbelievable. It's not like COINTELPRO, quite frankly, ever ended, but it's just the scope of their dossiers on people who were civil rights demonstrators. Absolutely stunning. So we're going to open the show talking about that today.
Call 800
Okay.
421-7325. 800
Well, you know, this whole thing, thank you. This whole thing with masks is very complicated. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do is not doing, which is we're going to have to bring the temperatures down.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, August 12th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. You're listening to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station based here in Chicago. AM 950 radio, my brothers and sisters to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Thank you, Sounds of Blackness, Gary Hines, Maestro, the great Maestro, for letting us use your music on this show. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. If you text me, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. Raphael, how you doing, sweetie, down there in Brazil? All my people, my Ashley King in Memphis, Tennessee. Love it, love it, love it. And Shirley in Philadelphia, and everybody from all over the country and all over the world. Please like and share, like and share. Raphael, I want to thank you and Vanderlei and all of my Brazilian brothers and sisters, our Brazilian brothers and sisters, for bringing more and more people to the show. We want to talk more about your issues down there. Of course, I have ties down there. I've performed in Sao Paulo and more than once. And it's just, I feel very at home when I go there. I wonder why. I wonder why. It's just a beautiful place. My girlfriend on the left coast, Carol Soskin, my Christmas sister. That's right. Christmas, Hanukkah. We're all in the mix. My girl, Jewel. How you doing? Is always sharing the show on different platforms. Thank you, everybody. Will and Linda and Jewel and Francis and the Gambia. Everybody, please like and share this show on Facebook and on different platforms. Like and share, please, right now. Just like and share. Like and share. Everybody, like and share. Just like and share. We're going to be talking about a story that I came across yesterday. Really interesting and disturbing. The state of Tennessee, the Department of Safety, along with Homeland Security, were spying on civil rights protesters last year. There were protests in Nashville. Ashley, you're down there in Memphis. And they compiled secret dossiers, who the people were dating. I mean, just all of their personal business. And they to this information. Can you believe it? Oh, yeah. Then we're going to be talking, of course, with our brothers and sisters in Washington and Texas about the vote. It turns out Texas Senator Ted Cruz blocked a discussion and a vote on the For the People Act. These people are really serious about denying us the vote. They are. They really, really are. And that's something for us to look at today, along with infrastructure. There's so many issues. And so whatever is really on your mind today, I want you to give me a call today. We're opening up the phone lines at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. WCPT. I want to hear from you. Shelby, good morning. How you doing? Joyce Anderson, Michael Holiness. I love it, love it, love it. Got a lot to talk about, but what is going on in Tennessee? Ashley, you didn't tell me about that. And Ashley's going to help me to find some people to talk about the eviction moratorium, which is, well, it's about to be ended. And people are asking about the landlords. You see, everybody who owns who owns a building is not rich. There's some people who worked very hard and they wanted to get some additional income, uh, invest their money properly, and they're the ones who are taking a real hit too. Is there any relief for them? Something to think about. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 89 degrees. It's muggy though. Scattered thunderstorms will be our lot today. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 81 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 220 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 22 points. And the S&P 500 closed up 10 points. The White Sox were shut out by the Twins yesterday, 1-0. But wow, it is the Brewers and the Cubs that had the major league record-tying game yesterday. Now, not only did the Brewers shut out the Cubs 10-0, but their pitcher, Corbin Burns, tied a major league record. He struck out 10 straight Cubs batters. 10 straight, everybody. Ouch. Please, you guys, do something about this. This is not good. It just broke my heart to see that. And another thing that's heartbreaking is the big fear of the Biden administration. It's their surprising new research. It shows that the effectiveness of COVID vaccines are fading faster than expected, everybody. They're fading faster than expected, raising fears inside the Biden administration. This is according to Axios. Medical consequences for Americans. Why does it matter? I think everybody believes this wanes over time. The question is to what extent, according to a senior Biden official. No one wants to be behind the eight ball here. We're going to be asking Dr. Deborah Holden about that because as we're being required to get the vaccines, people do want to know about their effectiveness. I think that that's fair, but we're finding that they are, not only are they as vaccines do, does their effectiveness wane over time? We're finding out they're waning very, very fast, everybody. So let's think about that as notable numbers of police officers across the country are refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. They're ignoring mandates and they're leaning on their unions to protect them. What do you think about that? What do you think about? Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Three major U.S. airlines will not mandate shots for their unvaccinated workers: Southwest, American, and Delta Airlines. As California, the largest state in the union, the most populous state, is requiring COVID-19 vaccines or tests for teachers, as the U.S. Education Secretary is backing the mandates. The Los Angeles City Council is going to make it more difficult for you to get around. They voted 13-0 to create vaccine requirements for indoor public spaces such as restaurants, movie theaters, and concert venues, everybody. And of course, I guess I should have expected this. Now there is a black market rising in vaccination cards. Did you believe that? No. You know what? Now that ought to be punishable. What do you think about that? A black market for vaccine cards, but I guess that was inevitable. But wow, what do you think about that, everybody? And this news is very, very interesting. This is from a Washington Post story. I posted it on my timeline yesterday, but I hope that you're paying attention. For the first time in the history of America's census taking, we've been taking census numbers really about since the beginning of the founding of the Republic. The number of white people in the United States is widely expected to show a decline when the first racial backgrounds from the 2026 census are reported this week. For 5 years now, the U.S. Census Bureau's annual updates of the 2010 census have estimated that the nation's white population is shrinking, and all population growth has come from people of color, namely Asians and Hispanics, everybody. What do you think about that? Do you think that's driving some of the unrest in the United States, or is it economic? Is it both? Call me, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. But what's inexcusably cruel is this, everybody. According to this Common Dreams report, 7.5 million people are set to lose their jobless benefits. Get this, everybody. Wait for it. On Labor Day this year. Got to do something about that. And since 1978, CEO pay has risen 1,322%. How much has worker pay risen? Okay, first guess. 100%? No. 50? No. 18%. Whew, Dr. Deborah Holden, we're going to skip the good news today and talk with you because we need some good news. We're hearing that is a whole lot to take. But you know what? Crisis creates opportunity. You know, the Chinese have symbols for their alphabet. And crisis and opportunity, same symbol. We have an opportunity to make things change. So I want to hear from you, everybody. Vicki Wells, you said the Black population has declined also for the preliminary numbers. Why do you think that is? Do you think, I mean, because now we have people who are claiming to be things other than Black, races other than Black. You know, they're claiming to be, you know, we got an issue with that, Vicki, you know, Native American, even though, you know, many of us do have Native American blood. I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I embrace it. But we kind of sort of want to be other things too. You know that's an issue. So we will talk about it. Dr. Deborah Furholden, how you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning, Santita. That Native American thing is interesting because that was something that was circulating in my family, and I held on to that with great pride. And then I did my ancestry, and the amount of Native Americans that I have in me likely means that my great-great-grandfather sat at a bar next to a man who was Native American, and they got their drinks. That's how much Native American I had in me.
Wait, I couldn't hear you.
I had as much Native American ancestry as if my great-great-grandfather sat at a bar, and they got their drinks mixed up.
Oh, you know what's interesting? But you know a lot of the tests. But you know what? The tests that we need to take. One of my dear friends, my girlfriend Candace, who we just married a couple of weeks ago, she was shocked to find out that she had as much Native American blood as she had. Because she said, girl, I was ready to go over to some country in Africa and find my cousins. I was ready. And she said, wait a minute, I got to stay right here. She found out she was like 1/8 Native American, and she was like, it really threw her off. But also, it depends upon the test that you take. She was explaining to me, you know, and I would, you know, one day I'd love for you to help us to explore that and help us to break that down. Because you know, it's just like my father's father is the first Black person buried in his family plot. I mean, because you know they're Native. He's from people who are heavily Native American. And then my brother Yusuf took a test, and they couldn't find any Native American blood. My mother was like, "You need to throw that test out. Look at your daddy. Are you serious?" So you know, I think we have a lot going on. But the Asian population is moving up. The Hispanic population is moving up, and they are also heavily Black. But that's something that's not claimed. But the Black population is flattening, if not dipping. So that's the population is falling. Now that is interesting. You know, it's interesting. So I don't know what to do with that, but I thought it was very, very interesting when I saw that headline in the Washington Post. Got to pay attention to that census data, everybody. Dr. Deborah Furholden, there is some disturbing news, and this is something that it's now, I guess it's also political because it was reported almost as a political story, because the Biden administration is fearing the waning effectiveness of the vaccines, which is something that you've talked about, I know, since the beginning. But you know what? I have to bring it up because when it becomes a headline, it's like this is the first time that people ever hear it. They're worried about the efficacy wearing off, the effectiveness wearing down. In fact, Pfizer is showing that I think they have there's a concern that they have, according to this Axios report, the Pfizer vaccine was only 42% effective against infection in July. Of course, I'm sure that would depend upon when you took it. But let's talk about the effectiveness of these vaccines. Why would it be alarming? And do you know how long people would how long are they most effective? Does anyone know that yet, Dr. Furholden?
No, we're learning.
Mm.
But what we do know is it's not, what do I want to say? The antibodies that you build from the vaccine, they don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told people right out the break, be prepared that this is going to be an annual vaccination. This is going to look, I'm pretty confident, very similar to a flu vaccine.
Okay.
It's going to have waning protection, and it will also need to be changed each year to match the, sort of dominant strains of COVID that are out. So, yeah, and that's something we have to learn in time. That's why this notion of boosters, I sort of told people brace for that, mm-hmm. because the people who participated in the clinical trials got their shots, well over a year ago.
No, more.
The people participating early in the clinical trials got their shots. Many of them were getting shots in, April, May, June. Mm-hmm. So we now should know and have some data on how long do those antibodies last.
Even though it's not official that people should get boosters, that's just part of the discussion. More than 1 million people in the United States have gotten them anyway. Is that safe? I mean, and because, we were not given the choice. Like, there's a question now about, the effectiveness of the J&J vaccine, and some, some places are not even giving you the option of getting the J&J. Some people are not even distributing that anymore. But you can still get it. Does it matter which vaccine you got? Will that determine which booster shot you should get?
They're trying to figure that out. It's a really great question, because my thing, am I now brand wedded? Am I stuck always have to get the, I got the Pfizer. Am I always going to have to get the Pfizer? It looks like the answer is no, right? It looks like once you, and we do have many, many cases of people who, some people got the J&J and said, I don't feel like I'm really protected, and then went and got 2 shots of Moderna. People have been doing that. People have been doing what they want and taking this virus to their own hands. I wouldn't recommend that people do that. It doesn't look like it causes any excess harm, but I personally wouldn't want to over-amp up my immune system.
Why not?
We see, because your immune system was designed to function in normal times and in times of need.
Okay.
So it's like crying wolf. If you keep amping it up, this is a part of what happens for people who really struggle and get hospitalized, and some people that die. They have this really heightened immune response, and it starts this cascade that sends their system out of whack. Their organs don't know how to respond. Many of the systems that were functioning normally before now start to function abnormally. It's like they get an over immune response, and you don't want that either. So I encourage people. We should be going with the protocols, but then the government owes us to tell us the truth. They owe it to us to tell us the truth. So I know for a fact they have data now on all those tens of thousands of people. I'm just pointing to any one of the trials. It was like over 30,000 people, I believe, in each of the clinical trials. So y'all can't go back to 1,000 of those people and give them, antigen tests and tests for antibodies and see what their immunity looks like? Like, we should be able to answer that question now. And literally every single COVID test that's done, they need to ask people, did you get vaccinated? And we need to know what vaccine they got and whether or not they are 2 weeks at post of the final shot. It's just such a wasted opportunity to not be getting that information. It's just a wasted opportunity. But we can do it. We can implement that right now. And that will tell us a whole lot. That will really give us the skinny on breakthrough infections and what percentage of breakthrough infections the cases are. People need to know that. They need to know that, because the reality of it is, if we're talking about the effectiveness is now going down, below 50%, below 40%, people need to know that. They need to know that.
And I think it needs to be reported, because you told us yesterday they're not fully reporting who gets what, who's getting the breakthrough infections. And I think that's problematic, because we're testing for, if you have the vaccine, you can go into these venues, but you can still have COVID. I mean, and it's just uneven. When I'm getting on a plane internationally, not only do they want to know if you've been vaccinated, but first and foremost, they want to know if you have COVID. That's what they want to know. Even that has primacy over whether you have the vaccine or not. And we're getting mixed messages. So when we talk about people who are fighting about masks and fighting about the vaccine, fighting for therapeutics, and on and on and on, when you have this kind of mixed messaging, Dr. Deborah Froholden, and to your credit, your messaging has not been mixed. You have been consistent, which is why you are still here, and I thank God for you, and the whole audience does. That's why we trust you, because you have been very consistent. You said we were going to need boosters. You said this was endemic. This was not going anywhere, that the strains would change, and the vaccines would have to change accordingly. You told us that we needed to work on our immune systems. You have been very, very consistent. But the people on TV are not consistent. I've seen something so cruel. I've got a minute left here, and I want you to have it. When they go see people in the hospital who have COVID and who are suffering, and who have to have relatives speak for them, the first thing they want to ask is, did you have the vaccine? Do you regret not having the vaccine? I said, now there's someone in the next bed who has had the vaccine. Why would that's so cruel to me, to ask someone that while their loved one is suffering? The last minute belongs to you. I mean, how can we just come together and make this work and eliminate this, flatten the curve, doctor?
Well, remind people, we flattened the curve initially in the absence of a vaccine. But you'll notice that was like a roller coaster ride. The numbers would go up, and then they go down, and then they go up, and they go down. And it would all vary as a function of what we were doing. When things started to reopen, the numbers would start to go back up. We'd have a holiday, and then we'd have that holiday effect. And in the weeks that followed, the numbers would go up. Why? Because people were together in mass. They weren't honoring protocols, etc. And so I do think people need to elevate their prevention practices. And you know me, I'm an advocate of, you do not need to do the most, and don't do the least. And it's right, but you don't need 30. Like Santita wears. You don't need.
I'm trying. I've got 10 seconds. They belong to you.
So folks, practice prevention. And prevention is what you do for your own body and what you do to protect yourself from others and others from you. But yeah, let's work on that immune system too. We can unpack that a little bit more tomorrow.
I am so tired of this woman. I love her, but she is. I can't believe you put me on blast like that. Yeah, I can. Associate Dean talking about me doing the most. I sure do, and I am exhausted. Back with more in just a few minutes. Did you know that the Tennessee Department of Safety, along with Homeland Security, was spying on civil rights protesters and compiling dossiers? Talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Get you. Oh, oh my gosh.
You and your 5 masks.
Girl, look, and you know, my family's like laughing at me all the time. I mean, they're like, my brother said, "Oh, you doing the most. So you the COVID queen. Is that it?" So I was sitting away from him and I pulled out my little Bassett tracing and I put it on my nose, having put having washed my hands and then sprayed once again with alcohol. And I put on my mask and I was ready. And he just looked at me and shook his head. He said, "There's the COVID queen." He looked at my mom. He said, "There she is." Okay. All right. He said, "Okay, come on, let's go." Oh, but girl, I love you to pieces. But you know what? This is something that you wanted to talk about. What we need to do to get our health together. And you know, there was a woman here in Chicago, Dr. Alvenia Fulton, and I call her name because you know they're people that we just need to continue. We need to honor their memory. We need to honor their lives. Dr. Alvenia Fulton, who would have been way past 100 now, she was nearly 100 when she died. Maybe it was about 20 years ago or so. She's the one who got Dick Gregory into his tremendous into healthfulness, and that's what he spent the rest of his life trying to do for us. And she was the one who talked about the raw foods. She was someone who pushed the really boosting our immune systems. I mean, girl, this is when I was a child. Okay, this is back in the 70s. Back in the 70s, and she was doing it before because she got him in the 60s. And completely changed his life. Completely changed his life.
We have Mr. McKee, and Attorney Hoffler is just going to need another minute, so I'll try her again shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Deborah Verholden, you want to stay with us for a little bit? You know, the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security created a confidential dossier of activists who were protesting last year in Tennessee. What, like who you're dating?
That's crazy.
Do you understand? I mean, girl, wait. Who you're dating?
What a waste of our resources. I'm not trying to be funny. The modern day protesters, and I had somebody that said to me, Black Lives Matter was a terrorist organization.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
said, a terrorist organization? I said, what part of them is terrorist? Is it the hashtag, the T-shirts, or the picket signs? The protest signs?
Oh, wait a minute. Is it Madokwe from South Africa? Hey, we're getting a lot of you from all overseas, and I'm sending you much love. Thank you so much. I'm sending you love, 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 love. I'm so glad you got to gather everybody from all over the world so we can have some real talk. Wow. Yeah. But stay right here. Because, baby, they went deep on folks. Not just social media, but who you are dating. But in the meantime, well, I'll just wait. Hey, Dwight D, Dr. D. Ooh.
Hey.
Okay, Dwight, let me hear you. Dwight, let me hear you so we can make sure we have you in a good spot.
Can you hear me?
Okay, keep talking, Dwight.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear
Back in
me?
10.
We can hear you. Paul, just make sure that he's in a good spot because his cell phone can be spotty.
Hey, Dwight, good morning.
Stay right there.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, voice of progressive Minnesota and up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Call me at 773-763-9278, 9278, sending you much love in South Africa. Mwah, my brother. Hey. You know what? This will remind you of what you've been dealing with down there, because you know what you dealt with the secret police in South Africa, with the Humvees and all of that. That's why my mother refuses to even look at a Humvee now. She said, "Do you know how they use the Humvees in South Africa to intimidate, uh, to send a horrible signal to our people over there?" Well, something interesting happened. Last year, we were watching all of the demonstrations and the protests and people exercising their First Amendment rights. Uh, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, as they say. The protests of last summer, they were a lot like the 1960s, everybody said, as they romanticized that period. And they said, yeah, I mean, we've not seen anything like this since then. Okay, all right. Well, News Channel 5 in Nashville reported that a demonstrator named Justin Jones discovered a document called People's Plaza, Tennessee, significant personnel, more than 2 arrests. Now, by the time he dug in, the dossiers of these protesters included social security numbers, names, addresses, social media photos, and information about personal relationships, who they're dating, what their relationships were like, all of that. I mean, can you believe that? In the meantime, in Tennessee, guess what? There was a newly proposed Tennessee bill that would have given immunity to drivers who unintentionally hit protesters blocking the streets. So what do you think of? What do you think about this? This was the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security who gathered secret dossiers, confidential dossiers of these protesters. Where else did this happen, everybody? What does this mean? Dwight McKee, before we bring on attorney C.K. Hoffler, I want to know what you think about this story.
Well, it's ironic and interesting. These people believe in democracy until the majority. They believe in honor until they make a treaty. They believe in truth until you tell it about them. These are the more predictable but inconsistent people alive because they contradict themselves at every level. It's interesting that they put dossiers on us for peaceful protests, but they welcome people into the Capitol and give them kind of an open season on being able to persecute and to really try to close down the Capitol and the process for democracy, and give them an open season with no real investigation about the people who do that. It's amazing that the contradictions in the society. Everything works for them because this thing is about white supremacy, who's going to be in control and who they're going to be in control of us. And it's the same old after 400 years to lock them down and then lock them up.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what does this sound like to you? The Department of Safety. I mean, this was done by the state and Homeland Security. They compiled dossiers. One young lady, they even put, she was never arrested. And her dossier included information on the fact that she was the daughter of a Metro firefighter. Unbelievable. I mean, they just dug deep.
Well, good morning, Santita. They did dig deep. And Santita, to your panel as well. It sounds like we're going back during the days when if you were a communist or perceived to be a communist, that they would have dossiers on you. They would target you. And all of a sudden your life as you knew it would change. It's very, very intrusive. I'm with Dwight McKee. Are they doing dossiers on all of those people that stormed the Capitol? Do those people have dossiers? Every single one of those people, because we have pictures of it, we have their names, we can trace them, we know who they are. Is there a dossier on each and every one of those people? Because they tried to overthrow the government. To target people who are engaged in civil rights or peaceful protesting is just a whole nother level of violation of, I believe, citizens' rights. It's a violation. There's no legal recourse, if you will. When I say violation, I'm not using it in the legal term unless there's something that's done that's illegal with that information. But monitoring, surveillance, I'm sure there are many statutes that allow government to do that. And not just federal government. There are state government agencies that justify doing that kind of thing for I believe no good reason, as a way of targeting people who are engaged in what they call civil disobedience. So I think it's not good. I think it's a bad thing to happen at this time, but I think it's where we are. And hypocrisy, I would just like to know answer to the question: do they have dossiers on all of those people who attempted to overthrow the Capitol, assassinate the sitting vice president of this country, and Nancy Pelosi and all of those people, Republicans and Democrats? Do they have dossiers on all of those people? And I would venture to say the answer is no.
Call me.
For me, that's hypocrisy.
Oh, it's hypocrisy, and it's very dangerous. Call me. Text me, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. This is not back in the 1960s or back in the civil rights days, as so many people are fond of saying. This is back in last year that this happened to everybody. Your dating history, your social security number, in the hands of, you don't even know who it's in the hands of. In the meantime, a bill was proposed that would have given immunity to drivers who, quote, hit protesters blocking the streets. So what do you think about that? I mean, okay.
Come on now. Come. I mean, we talk about hypocrisy. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. That's absolutely ludicrous. It's almost like we're living the J. Edgar Hoover years again. And we know what that was devastating for many of us. So I think, this is really not a good development. It's an infringement of civil liberties. But again, I always say, is it done across the board?
Mm-hmm.
Because the most egregious conduct that we've seen of Americans to date in terms of infiltration of government and all that was the attempted coup d'etat on January 6th of 2021. Mm-hmm. So I don't stand, and there's barely been a real investigation of that. Police officers committing suicide in the left, right, and center. People are devastated by that. This country's devastated by it. But yet I haven't seen a thorough investigation yet. Not the kind of investigation that you would expect when there's an attempted coup d'etat. In other countries, people who do that, suffer more severe consequences. So for people who are merely protesting Black Lives Matter, protesting because of the injustices in this country, protesting because of racial inequality, protesting because of social issues, social justice issues, they now have dossiers on them that include their dating habits. They probably have access to what happens in their bedrooms because of the high-speed internet and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a travesty. It really is a travesty.
And your telephone, which is surveilling you constantly, everybody, constantly. Call me, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Before I go to Dwight, Dr. Deborah Verholden, what does this mean to you? I mean, you're up in Michigan, which is a hotbed of political activity. There was even a plot to kidnap the governor, and they're finding that you had FBI informants in the middle of that. It was just this is a crazy time because you have a lot of heightened political activity. I mean, is everybody being surveilled? How does that make you feel?
Well, I doubt everybody is being surveilled. We had people who marched and stormed at the state capitol here with bazookas and machine guns and assault rifles. I don't think any of them were surveilled. The people who were plotting and planning the governor's demise, and they had a real doozy of a plan in place for her. They were going to take her out to the woods in Minnesota and give her some homegrown justice. I'm not even kidding. And the group that initiated that, I don't know. Do they have dossiers on them? I don't know. This just feels like an intimidation tactic. Like we gonna let people know that we watching them. And we're not only watching them, we're watching them and we're tracking other things and other people related to their lives. It seems like an intimidation tactic to get people to give up this, constitutional right that they have to speak out. I mean, it's just really, It just feels very un-American. You know, it's consistent with how we do business, but it's not consistent with who we say we are. And it's unfortunate because you know it is disproportionately happening to Black and brown people and people who don't follow certain agendas. And it should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to use our tax dollars to surveil us without just cause.
It was supposed to be, Dwight, after the church hearings. I mean, a lot of this, not all, but things were exposed that you coming out of the civil rights movement as a child, really, as a teenager, that you already knew. The church hearings were not a surprise to you. Before I go to the callers, Dwight, what was it like to live through that period when you knew, when you began to find out, oh, the government is surveilling us, when you began to mistrust the government? Because government mistrust did not start with these masks and with these vaccines. That started a little while ago.
Right.
It didn't. It did this. It is amped up over time. It's amped up over time. Dwight, what was it like to live through J. Edgar Hoover and all of that?
Well, for us, it wasn't government mistrust. It was government trust. We trusted the government to shoot at us and to oppress us and to lock us up in jail unjustly. We also always saw the government, for the most part, as those who were leading the counter-revolution for us, because we saw the results of their behavior. We saw what they did to the African presidents who were against America. We saw what they did in setting up all of the banana republics down in
South and Central America.
South and Central America. We lived not only through the Nixons, but we lived through the Hoovers and the Dulleses. We've always seen the government for us as oppressive. It was only some of us who got swept up in the hype that this was a democracy for the people, by the people, and not against the people. And so I think that what people are now coming into, because of the years of Obama and some productive years, and some guys been able to climb out of poverty or to have the billionaire's life, I think that it created a temporary illusion somehow that things had opened up and that we were becoming free. I remember when Obama was running, and they was running this propaganda, is racism over in America? Is this a race-free now America? And some of us bought the hype. Most of us didn't. Most of us knew that was not legitimate, that was not real, and that was not something that we could bank on. That all of that was the illusion of democracy, but most of these guys was looking to get refooted and rebooted so they can put that boot on our necks for another 100 years if they can. In every generation, we make a little progress, then there's a backlash. Baldwin talks about the fire next time, but we know that after every fire, there is the rain. That there is going to be a counter-insurgency from people who don't want us to make progress, and the boot is going to be replaced on our necks.
Let me go to you, Daniel from New Hampshire. Daniel, what's on your mind today?
I don't remember where I first heard it, but a while back, I think it might have been Tom Hartman. He said that I think it was the FBI has been doing this probably since Hoover. Collecting dossiers on anybody who has essentially a left agenda. He called it, was it like an anti-society agenda or society as it is? So this is not a new MO for them.
No, it's not new, but what's interesting, stay with me, Daniel, is that You know, people keep thinking back in the Hoover days, Hoover's been dead 50 years. This happened last year.
Yes, ma'am.
You know,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, I think this sort of thing never stops, right? It's always with us.
It's like the conversation we had last week, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the problem that Republicans don't have. It's what kind of Democrat are you? Are you good with this? Are you good with, your elected officials collecting dossiers on anybody who thinks that we can do better? Or, are you one of the people that probably have a dossier on you?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Down to who you date, who your daddy is, who your mom is, where they work. Whew. Oh, Daniel.
He said it, when I think it was Tom Hartman, and he said it wasn't just, being a civil rights protester. It's, do you believe the government should be, as pro-business as they are or not?
It's any form of any questioning of the official, if you will, party line. If you can, watch the movie that came out several years ago about Ed Snowden. Ed Snowden was nobody's revolutionary. He was very, very middle of the road, middle American. He even looked at protesters like, oh my goodness, these people just raising Cain. But it was when he had to step through the looking glass. Oh yeah, I mean, but I'm just to the audience who haven't. When he stepped through the looking glass, it's just like most of the people who've been on one side and they stepped through the other. He never saw anything the same way. Daniel, I'm sending you much love. I want to get a couple more callers in, but thank you. Be careful driving out there today. I love Daniel from New Hampshire. We catch him right early. Stephanie, what's going on, Stephanie?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I think one thing you got to realize is that when we started erasing and our history, it's like a lot of people thought the Oklahoma massacre was horrible. We've had more than 20 black, towns massacres the same way throughout history. Well, what's happening here is they're scared because we don't fear them. So they're doing everything in their possibility to get us to fear them again so that we can be but underneath them. This is all about white supremacy being scared that they've lost hold of the world. And if we read our history, we can see that this has been going on since right after slavery. Nothing has changed that bad. Nothing is that different that we need to let our guard down. And we need to sit down like when I was in Chicago, the Jewish temple there, to make their children go to the Jewish temple after school to learn their history. We need to open up our church doors, sit down, and make our children after school, Saturdays, whatever, learn history so they can see this is not new. And so they can see it coming and not be caught, and we don't get caught with our pants down like some of us are.
Amen to Stephanie. Stephanie from Illinois. Jim from Chicago. Jim, how you doing?
Hi, good morning. I'm just thinking about the anniversary of 9/11 and how we've been on surveillance since then, and how we've given up. We're on camera constantly. I remember I'm across the street from the train station downtown. I smoked a cigarette, and a voice comes out from the 9th floor and says, "Move away from the building." Like, oh my God! So I mean, we're on camera constantly. And who's watching us on this camera, and how are they coming to conclusions they're coming to? Because you can only trust human beings, Homo sapiens, so far. Sooner or later, you're going to make mistakes. But I mean, we're all on camera. What we can do about it, I don't know. Anyway, dear, have a good morning.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. He said, "Hey, who's watching who's behind the camera?" I love you. I mean, CK, that becomes the question. Who's behind the camera? Who is Big Brother? I mean, do we have any recourse here?
Well, I think to the extent that the government has ample ability constitutionally and otherwise, and then on a state-by-state basis, there's some state agencies that also have surveillance authority and the like. And so, do we have recourse? There would have to be severe abuse, but what would constitute a severe abuse of power and authority? We don't even know that we're being surveilled. So, and for people who are aware that they're being surveilled, then if they want to challenge it, I'm certain that and it's not that they shouldn't challenge it if they're being harassed or something like that for no reason. Which is usually the case. They could challenge that, but we must understand that the government does have broad powers. And whether it's on, because we're in a pandemic, people put things in little buckets to explain away behavior. Pandemic behavior, because the pandemic, we were trying to make sure this and that and that and this, or whether it's just because of some committee that has authorized them to look at threats, because everybody who's protesting, for some people, are threats. Threats to what? And when they're peaceful protests, there aren't any. It's not a threat. It's just people protesting. This country really theoretically was built on protest. People came over here that were being prosecuted in other countries. Others of us were forced over here, not being prosecuted in other countries. But many people came over here allegedly because they were prosecuted from other countries. So if that's the case, what is the problem with protest? It's not illegal. It's illegal if it's violent, if there's some criminal activity. But most of these protests, these people who are being profiled, I would bet dollars to donuts are peaceful protesters. They were not engaging in violent insurrection. They weren't doing what the people on January 6th were doing. We're not talking about that caliber of people. People protesting and saying, look, Black Lives Matter, or protesting George Floyd, what happened to George Floyd. And we're not alone. Of course, in London, Black people were arrested for just saying Black Lives Matter, protesting Black Lives Matter, and standing in solidarity with us. So, but it's just more poignant here in the U.S. because we're supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. So there is a lot of hypocrisy. I don't think we should be surprised. I think if you're going to challenge it, you have to have really, really strong grounds where they have really basically changed life as you know it. And it can't be a conspiracy theory. It's got to be where you've got concrete, direct evidence that that's happened and where you're being harassed.
And you know what? I'm so tired of being called a conspiracist when I know you got a plan. I mean, please, when I went to protest, you had planned to surveil me. What is that? That's not a conspiracy theory. People need to stop that and know that conspiracy theory comes from the intelligence community to again squelch dissent and more than discussion. Discussion. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. But they're defense.
Sure.
Conspiracy theory. So frame it different.
That's right.
Frame the issues differently.
That's right.
I'm not saying we buy into. We know what it is.
No. I'm not saying you. I'm saying we need to stop using. We need to stop tossing these terms around. You know.
No, I agree. So we need to frame the issues differently. Being harassed, having your constitutional rights violated, things like that. Things that are actionable. In different states, there's some behavior that is not permissible, even by government. So we just have to frame the issues differently. It's like with everything else, change the narrative.
And that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. What we are doing, we are now on the defense, and that is ridiculous. Well, the first thing we say when we see something and say something, we say, well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but please, this is not a conspiracy. This is a plan to surveil you when you decide to march in demonstration of your rights and your opinion. So pay attention, everybody. Pay attention. This didn't happen back in the civil rights days. This happened last year. Okay? And let's just
something that young folks need to be mindful of.
I got 10 seconds.
Is be careful because some jurisdictions, if you have a little arrest history, then that could impact you getting student loans. So just be careful.
Yeah, and you know what? And we need to sue on that. We need to sue. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Well, hold on. I got to get out of this break. We'll talk on Facebook Live on the Santita Jackson Show, talking about this and our vote when we come back on the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 AM 950 radio. Call me 773-763-9278. Back in just a few minutes. Here, you guys, I have hard breaks and I got to get out. CK, because you have to leave at 45 after, I'm going to let you go at the bottom of the hour. Okay?
Okay.
But we've got to talk about what's happening in, you see Ted Cruz shut down the discussion.
Oh, my God.
Hey, and and a state representative, Ron Reynolds, yesterday, he said, this is not just about Texas. Because Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, shut down the For the People Act discussion for everybody in the United States. Think about that, everybody. Oof.
And the other thing, too, that we have to be mindful of, it's all related. So whether you're talking about voter suppression, you're talking about the homeless issue, because, you know, the moratorium is just going to run out again, you know. And so if you are homeless, you can't vote. Let's just do a wake-up call. There are certain places where you can vote, like I think Illinois, they're progressive states. But in general, you have to have a movement, as Reverend Jackson has and other organizations have, to get homeless people to vote. There's got to be a movement to make sure they're registered. Because if you don't have an address, where's your voter registration card going? With all these voter suppression laws, you've got to have this and that and that and this. If you're homeless, you don't have this and that and that and this. So all of this is related. It really is. It really is. It's not by happenstance. It's not by coincidence. Because unlike, you know, the Democrats, there is a very, very well-staged, well-executed plan that the Republicans do. They do have, and that they execute on. I'm just saying the way I see it, not being critical one way or the other. And whereas, you know, often the Democrats, we do not have the same kind of executed plan. And I think that we have to just look at all of that. Because it's not by happenstance.
Absolutely. Because, you know, I don't think it's by happenstance that we're sitting up here flailing in the wind either. Because both of these parties, increasingly, we see they protect corporate interests. Okay? And people, we need to stop that. If the Democrats are if you're going to give them your votes, you need to make them act on your behalf. Period. And, you know, Republicans, I would urge you to do the same thing, because you all listen to this show too. You need to make people do for you. Period. They're doing for corporations. They're not doing for you. They're doing you. Crazy.
Well, I think the other thing fundamentally is, on some level, these are not partisan issues. The right to vote is not partisan. I'm going to continue to repeat that. That's not a partisan issue. It really shouldn't be treated as a partisan issue. It really shouldn't, but yet it is, and that's the travesty. That's the travesty.
Yeah, and you know what? And then what's ironic is this: the people who've been guilty of voter fraud have been the Republicans. The guy in North Carolina. I mean, I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, and they've been party leaders. I mean, how do you do that?
But that's never underscored. That's never underscored. So I think that we have to just keep fighting. You know, that's the bottom line, Santita. It's fighting for voting, fighting to help the least of these. Because, and for those people who haven't seen this, what happens to the least of these happens to all of us.
Absolutely.
All of us. It's not just people who are low income, poor on the street. All of us. It is a societal ill. So, and that's not, by the way, that's not a partisan concept either.
Hold on, CK. Philip Sharp wanted to know if the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the homeless had the right to vote.
I don't know that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the homeless have the right to vote. I know that because voting, and I'd have to tell them I'd have to research that. Okay. But different states, as you know, the states are the ones that administer the vote. So when you have places in Florida, where in Florida, the state legislature, the people voted that if you are for instance, a formerly convicted felon, that your rights could be restored. Many states have that. It is the state legislatures that have blocked that. So I'd have to look in whether the Supreme Court has ruled in terms of whether homeless people can vote, because it does not come to mind right now. I have to research that. And I'll research it in the course of the show.
Okay. It's just, I think it's important to note. Because that impacts where your children go to school. Because you need to live in a certain district for your child to go to public school. I mean, there's a lot by having a destabilized citizenry that really can make America not be what America is really supposed to be. I mean, America's been an evolving concept, no question about that, Dwight. But
what is America supposed to be? That's where the confusion comes in for me. Is that we have to stop buying into the mythology. Those rules only only apply to us. That's not the real America. America is anti-socialism until it's time to subsidize the corn crop. You know, they're highly anti. When it's time for us to have health care, they're anti-socialist. When it's time to subsidize the corporations and the banks, then it's open season. I mean, we have to understand that there are two Americas. There's America, the illusion America that we live on. Then there's the real America that they manipulate for their own advantage. When I was growing up, they had a show, Alan Fudd had a show called Candid Camera, and he would say, smile. You on camera, and we lived our lives that way. We lived our lives believing that we were on camera every day of every hour because that was reality. These phones that we talk on, they also take our pictures. These televisions that we watch also watch us. This is not the America. This is not the Superman America, the land of the free, home of the brave, that they propaganda us into believing. This is a technological South Africa. Has always been, and probably will always be, and we will
back in 15.
Okay. Stand by, Mike. Stand by, Dwight. No, stand by. I'm coming up. I'm feeling you. We're about to come up. Okay, I can hear something, a computer in the background.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, August 12th, 2021. I'm coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me or text me at 773-763-9278. 763-9278. I want to hear your thoughts. What did you think about Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, surveilling civil rights protesters last year? They compiled secret dossiers, social security numbers, your name, your parents, who they are, where they work currently, even who you're dating or who you're with, personal relationships. They got all of that. What do you think about that? And then what do you think about Ted Cruz shooting down the For the People Act? He did that late on Monday. What do you think about that? They told us in Texas that we're not just fighting for us. We're fighting for all of America to have the right to vote. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. If you want to text me, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. But I want to hear your voices today. I want to thank you, Daniel and Stephanie and Jim, for calling in. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about the vote? What are your thoughts about being surveilled if you go out to march? What do you think about that? They're all connected, everybody. So call me or text me at 773-763-9278, and let's hear what your thoughts are. We're going to have Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis and Dave Daly, the author of Unrigged and Rat Effed, talk to us about this. And, of course, Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Dwight McKee are still with us. And I think Dr. Deborah Holden is still listening in. Fantastic group. Everybody, Chicago, we're going to have a high of 89 degrees today. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 81 degrees will be your high. Mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 220 points. The NASDAQ closed down 22 points. The S&P 500 closed up 10 points. The White Sox, well, they were shut out by the Twins yesterday, 1-0. But, what happened to the Cubs? They were shut out by the Brewers in Major League history-making fashion, everybody. Corbin Burns, who is the pitcher for the Brewers, well, guess what? He not only shut out the Cubs, he struck out 10 straight batters, everybody. He tied a Major League record. Ouch. Cubs, you got to come back strong because that's tight, everybody. More than 98% of U.S. residents now live in an area with a high or substantial risk of COVID-19 community transmission, according to a CDC study. A month ago, that figure was only at 19%. What has happened, everybody? What has happened? And this is happening as the Biden administration is very worried. They have a big fear. What is their big fear? That these vaccines are not as effective as they were. Surprising research, according to this Axios report, shows that the effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines are fading faster than expected, raising fears inside the Biden administration about the health and messaging consequences for Americans. According to a senior Biden official, I think everybody, quote, believes that this wanes over time. The question is, to what extent? Wow, everybody. So what do you think about that? As we look at Pfizer, new data shows that their vaccine was only 42% effective against the infection in July. But there's so many different factors for that. And of course, we're going to be talking to Dr. Deborah Holden about that more extensively even tomorrow. The three major U.S. airlines will not mandate shots for their unvaccinated workers: Southwest, American, and Delta. In the meantime, Los Angeles City Council has voted 13-0 to create vaccination requirements for people who want to dine indoors, go to movie theaters, or concert venues. And they're mandating requirements, COVID-19 requirements for teachers, as they're backed by the U.S. Education Secretary on that. And maybe predictably, everybody, a black market is rising for COVID-19 vaccination cards. One man, according to a report from Reason, even was able to duplicate or forge a vaccine card in under 20 minutes. All population growth in the United States today is driven by minorities, namely Hispanics and Asians, everybody. For the first time in the history of the United States, census taking, the number of white people in the United States is widely expected to show a decline when the first racial breakdowns from the 2020 census are reported this week. For 5 years, the U.S. Census Bureau's annual updates of the 2010 census have estimated that the nation's white population is shrinking, and all the population growth has been from people of color, namely Hispanics and Asians, everybody. In the meantime, we're finding that 7.5 million people are set to lose their jobless benefits on Labor Day, and stunningly, since 1978, CEO pay has risen by, get this, everybody, 1,322%. But the typical worker pay has risen by, okay, wait for it, everybody, 100%? No. 50%? No. 25%? 18%. CEOs got a 1,300% plus pay hike. Workers, 18%. What do you think about that? Those are some of the headlines, really, the headlines, but the bylines between the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, we're talking with attorney C.K. Hoffler, of course, the People's Attorney. She has her own radio show on WAOK every Tuesday from 10 to 11 Central Time, 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time. I want you to give her your support. They're already number one, but we can always go past number one. I love it. I love it. Love it. And of course, she's the People's Attorney, the outgoing president of the National Bar Association and the chair of Rainbow Push. Dwight McKean, noted social scientist. I believe Dr. Deborah Holden is still there listening in with us. And I want to hear from you, everybody. What did you think about the story from Tennessee? What do you think about this 5-alarm voting rights fire? That is what has been described by what Senator Ted Cruz did. What did he do? He blocked a trio of bills on voting rights, gerrymandering, and campaign finance disclosure early Wednesday. Now, what do you think about that, everybody? Now, when we had Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds here, he's part of the fugitive legislators. They only make $600 a month. But they said, look, Texas is already the most voter restrictive state in the United States. The governor is seeking to make it even more difficult for people to vote. So in order to stop the vote, they left. They denied the legislature, their colleagues, a quorum. But now the Texas Supreme Court has ruled that they could be arrested. Wow, that's a whole lot. And he said, I'm fighting State Representative Reynolds said, we are fighting not just for Texas, we're fighting for the United States. We're on the Hill lobbying for the People Act. That's what we're trying to get done. And Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, blocked it. Wouldn't even let it come up for discussion. Ooh, Dwight McKee and Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what do you think about that? Attorney Hoffler blocked it. Wouldn't even let it come up for discussion.
And in typical Ted Cruz way, he did block it, and it's very unfortunate. Just think about what that's saying to the American people, that voting, the ability to vote or voting rights, and fixing some of the problems that we see nationwide are not important enough for the Republicans to even allow discussion on this. So we're in a country where we pride ourselves on First Amendment and the ability to be able to speak truth to power, to be able to speak your mind, to be able to articulate how you feel. But yet on something as critical as voting, that discussion's been blocked by the people that we have elected and that our taxpayers pay, our taxpaying money pay to represent us. That is really a travesty. So this is what needs to happen. The Democrats have to get together, and the president, they have to get together and figure out a way of passing it. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I would just encourage people to call the senators. It doesn't even have to be your senators. Call U.S. senators and say that they, and make sure that you're heard if you feel this way, and say that it needs to be passed, that we need to see the passage of comprehensive voting rights, a Comprehensive Voting Rights Act. You can call 202-224-3121. That's how you get through. Blow up the lines. Get your friends to call. This is so important. If you care at all about voting, then you will continue to call the senators, call your senator and any other senator. And, you can look online, you can see who is opposing it, and say that you feel that this needs to be passed. Every call makes a difference. They log in, they monitor the number of calls because that is a reflection of the people. And the one thing that we know that U.S. senators want to be, that is reelected. So please do that. It's a travesty to not even have the discussion.
Absolutely. Dwight McKee, he blocked the opportunity to vote on the For the People Act, the Redistricting Reform Act, which would eliminate gerrymandering or certainly push it back. I mean, just what is going on here? I mean, not to mention the fact that that we're not, that the Democrats are not, they should suspend the filibuster, CK, but first you, Dwight. I mean, you don't have to end it, but what you can do is mend it by adjusting it so that you can vote on these Voting Rights Act and then let the filibuster ride.
I don't know why we're so timid about this. This is not, I'm sorry, Dwight. I'm just so sorry about the filibuster. I don't know why Democrats are timid about that. It is not a strong intellectual process. They can do it. They should do it. Why wouldn't they do it?
I don't know. You can figure that out for me. Why won't they do it, Dwight?
But why are we surprised about this? His family supported Batista in Cuba. His father supported the Bay of Pigs. This is a generational oppression. These guys, and it's not just American oppression; it's worldwide. Mm-hmm. These guys, the whole plan is to dominate the world and control the world, and so we're just part of a larger process that they put in play. With the CIA, with the federal government, to control the world. I mean, it sounds conspiratorial, as they were talking about earlier, but it's history. That's why they don't want us to teach it, because it's the truth that these people have a superiority complex, believe that the planet belongs to them, and anybody who wants a voice or vote in that is impeding upon their right to run things.
And you really do need to look at the background, don't you, Dwight? You do need to look at where he was from in Cuba. And, and I have to tell you guys, I take this, Dwight, I want you to continue. I take this personally because my grandmother chopped sugar cane in Cuba. She picked beans there. She was a very dark-skinned Black woman who didn't have the options that lighter-skinned people of color have. She didn't have those options. And she said to me, she never talked about her background. She never talked about her youth because it was so painful. It was so painful. She was orphaned when she was 11 or 12, had her first child at 14, and all of that. And I want you to know, she said, let me tell you something. People say a lot about Castro, but we were little more than slaves when I was a child working there. I said, ooh, okay.
And his granddaddy treated your grandmother the way he's treating us.
Absolutely.
This is how this thing is set up to work. And if we don't fight it and resist it, we're going to be as much of a victim to it as Aunt Tilly and Aunt Gertrude and your grandmother was to it. Because this is how they set this thing up.
Oh yeah, they set it up that way. I mean, and not understanding his politics. And I still trying to figure out how he got as far in American politics as he has, running for president. Didn't he come from Canada? Look, I mean, in shutting down the vote, everybody, what do you think about this? 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. See, you understand well, why the politics of Florida is what it is, Dwight and CK, because that's the Cuban who came here. I mean, I'm not hating on anybody, everybody, but I know right-wing politics. Right-wing politics is what it is. And right-wing politics is driving a lot of what we're fighting against. And I don't care what color it is. It's right-wing politics when you're denied the right to vote. It's right-wing politics when someone is taking your personal information when you go out in the streets and demonstrate, which as an American, not only do you have the right to do, Teddy Roosevelt said you had an obligation to express dissent. Did he not, Dwight? CK? He said, no, that's your patriotic duty.
Absolutely.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes, he did. And we have to figure out, for the Democrats, the TK's point, is that are they on the side of democracy or are they really on the side of the oppressors? Because they can do things to suppress the suppressors. And yet they seem so helpless. Every time there's a major vote in behalf of democracy, somehow they can't muster the energy or the wherewithal to be able to fight for the rights of the oppressed. We have to figure out, are they really who we think they are, or are they Republicans?
You tell me. I want to know what you all think. 773-763-9278, 773-763, WCPT. I mean, who are you really? Who are you fighting for? Because the fact, CK, the fact that the filibuster is still in place, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about it. What you can do is suspend it. You can suspend it to get these voting rights acts through. That's what you can do.
Well, and this has been something that was completely predictable. You know, in my world, a lot of times when I do cases, it's what is reasonable, what was predictable, what was foreseeable. This was foreseeable. It was foreseeable before the administration was sworn in that the filibuster was going to be an issue, because we knew then what the votes were. We knew then that Kamala was going to have to break. She was going to break the vote, tie the vote, break the tie. So this discussion about the filibuster is old. We just need to do it. Just do it. Take action. I don't know. Again, I use the word why we're so timid about this. What is the downside given the upside? Everything is a risk. You know, when it comes to politics, there's always an upside and a downside. But this is something worth fighting for. This is something that this administration has made a priority. So it's not just the administration; it's the Democrats as a whole. We need to get it together and do something about the filibuster. This is not a new discussion. It's not a new debate. We know what the options are. And so in my humble impression, there needs to be action.
But they haven't made the filibuster. They have not made that a priority. And that for me, for the life of me, because it's in the way. Number one, it hurts the Democrats for 2022. You know, and I appreciate bipartisan, We all need to come together, kumbaya, but come on, who are you fooling? That's not what this is. Stop it. Because now you have to get the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill through reconciliation anyway. So why don't we reconcile to get our voting rights? Do it that way. Do that too. How about that? Push that in the middle of the night. Hello?
And I do have to believe, Santita, that there is a plan. I do believe that there is a plan to tackle this. I'm just impatient because there are 52 brave, courageous legislators from Texas whose lives are standing in the balance.
And money.
So
no, stay right
money.
there. Let me go to Travis from Maywood. Travis, what's on your mind?
Good morning. Fantastic show.
Thank you.
One of the problems as Democrats we have to understand, and we saw this with President Obama, it was Democrats who also stood in his way. And we got the same problem around the country. We vote Democratic, and we give the Democrats damn near 100% of our vote and our support. But look how they treat us. And same here in Chicago and Cook County and the state of Illinois. We have SB 508 that Democrats and Republicans voted for that will raise the taxpayers' taxes on property every year. SB 508. And Democrats did this to us. So we need the government to veto that section, SB 508.
I'm hearing you, Travis. I mean, but it's not just, it's a corporate driven politics to which Republicans and Democrats aspire. And I hear you, but we're the party. We're the ones who have the votes. We're the ones who have the power. What's that number they need to be calling, CK?
Absolutely.
We're the ones. I mean, and we need to stop playing with these centrist politics when we have right-wing problems. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous.
How do we have two Democrats, Santi? How do we have two Democrats who's standing in our way? That makes no sense.
Well, you know what? And moderate Republicans, too. See, I'm not willing to let anybody off the hook.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Anyone. I'm not just going to look at Manchin and Sinema, because people need to be in West Virginia demonstrating and in Arizona demonstrating, and they are. But there's more than that. You need to make voting rights an issue for all 100 senators, all of them. All of them. And we need to make the filibuster an issue with the Democrats, period.
Right. But why do they have to every 25 years renew the Voting Rights Act for us? And if somebody get off the boat today and become a citizen, they ain't got to worry about their Voting Rights Act.
Oh, yeah, but they do. They do. Because the Voting Rights Act actually covered them, too. And it covered women, too, and white women in the South. And on and on and on. The Voting Rights Act helped. It didn't just help us. It didn't just help us. But you know what? If we want race-specific answers, we cannot shrink from pushing for things that will help Black people. But the fact is that which helps Black people, Travis, helps everybody. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You get going. If you're going to be of another color, Travis, I need you to advocate for me too. And I'm going to demand that.
I agree.
1 minute.
But where are the white women? Where are the Hispanics?
Well, now let me tell you something. Down in Texas, they do have a strong brown-black coalition. They do. But we're the ones who have to make them do it. The only reason you got Geraldine Ferraro on the ticket in 1984 was because Jesse Jackson advocated for it. None of the candidates throughout the campaign would say that they would put a woman on the ticket. He's the only one who came out the gate saying that he would have a woman on the ticket if he were the nominee. And the white women never thanked Reverend for that. And they don't give him credit today. Shame on them. Shame on them for that.
That's true.
She didn't just slide on that ticket. She was put on that ticket, and she was put on that ticket to try and undercut the rainbow. But I tell you what, I'm going to call you out until you do right by me in history. Stay right there, Travis. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute.
We are victorious.
Travis, would you like to say anything else?
Yes, I want our community to understand. Number one, you got a fantastic show. They should tune in to you. And also, folks, we got a bill called SB 508, which is dangerous to our community. We need the governor to veto Section 5 of that bill, and we need our Black caucus who voted for this.
What does it say, Travis, very quickly? What does it say?
The bill says that the taxing bodies can come back every year and recoup the money that you may have garnered when you file for a property tax cut with the county assessor, the board of review, and even if you went to the circuit court and got a tax break. That bill allows all those taxing bodies to come back to
We have Commissioner Ellis.
and recoup all that money back. That is sad.
Have you done any work with
And both parties voted for it.
Well, well, of course they do. Both parties are in this, Travis. That's why you have to make the point. People are not just going to do for you. They will do you in politics, but they're not going to do for you. That's why you have to push people to push for you. That you elect, you are the boss. They work for you.
Yes.
We get that twisted. No. We don't understand it. We don't understand it.
You're right.
We don't.
Sometimes we need to look in the mirror and say,
And we have Mr. Daly.
We're the problem.
And yeah,
We're the problem.
but we're part of the problem. We're part of, and we're the solution. Let's keep it positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, my queen.
King, and tell everybody about the show, okay, sweetie?
I will.
Sending you much love. CK, you still with me?
All right.
I'm still here, Santita.
Okay, I'm going to let you go as soon as you come back, you'll make a quick statement. But you've got Commissioner Ellis, who's on his bike right now, and Dave Daly, who is not.
I decided to wait. I decided I didn't want you to shame me, so I haven't gotten on my bike. I can wait until it's 100 degrees.
Oh no, he didn't. Did you see what he just did to me? To me too. Okay. My brother does it too. He's taking a picture of Commissioner Ellis's book. I got a whole song right here. I can't believe this man just did this to me. Huh?
Good morning, Rodney. What your folks are doing in Texas, we have, I reached out to a whole coalition of legal groups to try to help them. I get off of that. I don't know that they need bolstering.
Oh yes, they do. They do. And I came right this morning because Senator Carol Alvarado, my good friend, in the Senate from Houston, is filibustering. She just surpassed Senator Wendy Davis's record. So she's been on the floor for about 13 hours.
Ooh.
So it's the longest filibuster
Back in 1 minute.
So far. And when the man did it back when I was an intern in law school at the state capitol of Texas, he got to cheat a little bit because he had to, the senators surrounded him and they were afraid that he was going to change his bag there, privacy bag, or break and let him go. They let him take a laboratory break.
Oh, bless his heart.
40 hours. That was the record for a filibuster. But it's good. It won't kill the bill. It'll slow it down. But it helps put the spotlight, the attention of people in Texas in particular on it, because although the House Democrats did a great job on getting national and state attention, it takes a long time for people to filter through and see just
10 seconds.
they're doing to make it more difficult for people to vote and know that it has a disproportionate impact on certain people.
Stay right there. Stay right there. I'm coming to you. CK, you can only stay with us for a minute or so, but stay here.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Everybody, back to the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you, Travis, for calling in from Maywood. Sending you much, 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 much love. Thursday, August 12th. 2021, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and CWCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Keep those calls coming in at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT, if you want to text me, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that, but I want to hear your voices today. It's so wonderful hearing your thoughts, hearing this. And of course, now we have got Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis with us. Of course, he's our favorite. He's part of the family here. And of course, part of the family is a man whose book, first bestseller, I cannot say the words because that'll get me put off the radio forever and ever. Amen. Rat effed. Count unrigged. How Americans are battling back to save democracy. And of course, Dwight McKee's still with us. And C.K. Hoffler, Attorney C.K. Hoffler is going to be leaving us. Your very, very dear friend, Commissioner Ellis. C.K. Hoffler, what do you want to tell us before you go?
We have to keep fighting. You know, I know that some people are tired of hearing people saying that we have to keep fighting. When we look at what's happening in the U.S. Senate, we look at the actions of Senator Ted Cruz and blocking the discussion of voting rights in Senate. Just imagine what that means. Imagine what it could mean to those 52 brave legislators in Texas. Because if there is federal voting legislation passed, that would address the majority of some of the issues that the Texas legislature, and Rodney can speak to this more, is trying to impose on that state in terms of voter suppression. And it would also address the issues in jurisdictions like Georgia and Florida, where voter suppression laws have already been passed, heinous, oppressive laws. So we have got to continue fighting. Call the U.S. senators. Call people in the administration that you know. We must put pressure on our government to do what it takes, whether it is modifying the filibuster, getting rid of the filibuster, to pass voting rights laws on a federal level. That's imperative. Otherwise, this is not even Jim Crow 2. We're going to be at a stage in this history of this country that will be humiliating, embarrassing, and oppressive. And we cannot let that happen, ladies and gentlemen.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, chair of Rainbow Push and outgoing president of the National Bar Association. Every Tuesday on WAOK, the iconic talk radio station out of Atlanta, she does a legal segment. You don't want to miss it. It's from 11 to 12 Eastern Time, 10 to 11 Central Standard Time. Sending you much love, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Texas Harris County Commissioner. Oh, sending you much love. Texas Harris County Commissioner.
Bye, everyone.
Rodney. What is this? What is going on with Ted Cruz? I mean, when we had Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds on yesterday, and he said, you know what, we're not just fighting for Texas, we're fighting for the United States. We're lobbying for the People Act. There's gerrymandering that's on the table. We have a trio of voting rights legislation that really need to be addressed. That's what we're here to do, because we all need protection. And then Ted Cruz blocks this trio of bills on voting rights, on gerrymandering, on campaign finance disclosure. How does that happen?
I spoke to Ron Reynolds a few minutes before your producer dialed in just to check on him. By the way, he's headed back. Those Texas legislators, the Democrats in the State House in Texas, have put this issue on the front burner. Their colleagues around the country, about 100, flew in to support him. Reverend Jackson was there, Reverend Barber as well. Here's the silver lining. I hope we can find out of what Ted Cruz did by killing that bill. I hope it shows Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema that there's no way they are going to get any Republican support. I don't think they'll get a Mitch Romney. I just don't think that Mitt Romney, I don't think they're going to get any support. Well, I think that what I'm hearing from their meetings when those Texas legislators met with Senator Manchin, I don't think they got to see Senator Sinema, is that he wants to make the case that he reached across the aisle. Okay, Senator, make the case. It was an attempt, obviously, on this bill for them to have the discussion and see what would the Republicans vote for in the light of day. There's some things in both of those bills that a few senators who are Democrats have problems with nationally, just won't say it. I don't think Sinema's the only one. Here's an example. A lot of our friends, by the way, don't necessarily want an independent voting commission unless they pick in the so-called independent commission. You know, it's an age-old problem, Santita. Even for us, usually the African-Americans want all the blacks they can get. Hispanics want all the Hispanics they can get. White liberals want all of those they can get. You know, at my board, I mean, I get it. I was here by myself. for 2 years, and it was hell. So I want to give up some of the black voters are the most loyal voters in the Democratic Party. I want to make sure I'm not the last African American on this board, but I'm willing to share some of those. I'm willing to share some of the Hispanics who are more apt to vote as opposed to the ones who won't vote. That's what happens around the country. Sometimes they'll try to put, in the old days, Republicans would try to pack, Democrats try to pack all of the Democrats in certain districts so you have strong black or brown ones. And then the Republicans try to crack them. You got me? So it'll help them. It kind of goes that way. So I'm hoping that what Cruz did backfires on him. I hope it makes the case to Senator Manchin. Look, put your cards on the table, Republicans. What will you vote for? I mean, you're talking about reestablishing the voting provisions that Republican Congresses, Republican presidents reenacted, including President Bush. Bush's. I think one came under Papa Bush and one came under the son. But look, I hope that's progress by keeping it on the front burner. I think you saw on the White House's part by getting a larger infrastructure package through the first hurdle. There'll be others. Senator Manchin may have heartburn with some stuff. They're going to have to govern with the 50 votes. And if part of the process is just going through to figure it out. You talk about adjusting the filibuster. So I was up half the night checking to see how long this filibuster in the Texas Senate is going on the voting rights bill, voter suppression bill, by the way, in Texas. Senator Alvarado up about 14 hours. I mentioned that a little bit during the break. Look, she's doing a filibuster the way it was designed. Mm-hmm. She's standing there the entire time. I mean, every time I'd wake up, I just pop it on and watch. You can look up Senator Carol Alvarado in Texas and look it up now. She's standing there. You don't get to stop and go to the facilities. You don't get to put any water in your mouth. If nobody's paying attention, maybe somebody can slip you a cough drop if they're not looking, but stand there. So now the purpose of her doing that filibuster is to put a spotlight on the issue. She cannot talk for 10, 12 days. It's virtually impossible to stand up 24 hours without a break. There's a record in Texas of 48 hours, but it was kind of cheating. He was not really up 48 hours. As I mentioned earlier, I was an intern in law school around the state capitol when Senator Bill Meyer did that. But look, they could adjust the filibuster rule that way. Then the Republicans can go in there and have a good show. They can make their point to their constituents. Most of them up there without a camera in front of them, sitting in a chair. I doubt that they can stand up more than 8 hours and talk. Even the youngest went up there. But they're not going to go more than a day. Maybe you can do it 24 hours, and then the Democrats could go ahead and pass the bill. You can make that adjustment. I get it. When President Biden makes that comment, go back and put the filibuster the way it was intended. It was used to make a point, to put a focus on the bully pulpit, not the way it was changed over the years, where you can just sit in your office. You got me? And just announce you're going to have a filibuster like Ted Cruz did for 15 minutes. And then everybody leaves. You get them to talk 15 minutes and it's over with. That's not a filibuster. That's a chatterbuster.
David Daley, he shot down these bills, these 3 bills on gerrymandering, on voting rights, on campaign finance disclosure. What was he able to? I mean, it's a rising tide. I don't think he won't be able to hold it back forever unless we fight. What did he do when he shut down the discussion bill?
Wow. I think what he did is he made it clear that the Republican Party is not going to have any conversation on voting rights or redistricting or campaign finance or any of these things that are so essential to our politics right now. We can't even have a conversation about them in the U.S. Senate, which bills itself as the greatest deliberative body in the world. Not exactly sure they can call themselves that with a straight face. What this ought to do, and we keep saying this, right? Because the evidence has been there from the very beginning, and it only mounts higher every day. This should be another indication for Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema that the Republican Party is not going to do anything on these crucial bills, and that we've got to find a workaround on the filibuster so that a majority of senators can actually do something to protect our most foundational, fundamental right, our right to vote. They keep talking about how, well, if we're going to make changes to the electoral system, it has to be bipartisan. They need to look around the country and see what Republicans are doing. What Republicans in Georgia and North Carolina and Michigan and Ohio and Texas and Arizona and Iowa are doing. It's not bipartisan. They are enforcing and enacting these draconian voter suppression bills with Republicans only. And they are ramming them down the throats of voters, oftentimes in states that they have gerrymandered so severely that Democratic candidates win hundreds of thousands more votes, but Republicans take more seats in these state legislatures. This is really, we have had so many warning signs, not just in the last 8 months, but over the course of the last decade, if not longer, as far as what is happening with entrenched Republican minority rule in this country. In many states, they barely resemble representative democracy at all at this point, because a majority of citizens are unable to come together and change their government if that's what they wish to do, because of the way districts are drawn or because of disparate barriers to the ballot box that are set up intentionally. We keep saying that, this kind of autocracy can't happen here. It already is. And Democrats have this moment where they can do something about it. They have complete control of Washington. They may not see that kind of control for a long time again, right? Today is the day that the starting gun is going to be fired on redistricting for the next 10 years when the Census Department releases data to the states that will allow them to begin drawing the maps that will be used for state legislatures and Congress for the next decade. Republicans are going to have the upper hand in this process again in 2021, just as they did in 2011. They may be able to take the U.S. House back simply through drawing new districts alone in places like Texas and Georgia and North Carolina and Florida. So if Democrats don't take full advantage of this moment that they have right now, it's not certain that it's going to come back around again for a long time. So the fact that they have now squandered 7.5 months in Washington is I think, dangerous.
Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Texas Harris Commissioner Rodney Ellis, and you've been in the state Senate. You've worked in Congress. You worked for Congressman Mickey Leland. You ran his office. You understand federal, state, county, and local. And you really understand it all. What should we be doing locally, countywide, statewide, nationally? I mean, do we have any power? What should we be doing? Because it's like I feel like with Ted Cruz blocks his trio of voting bills, I feel like we're almost asleep at the wheel. I don't think he knows what's going on.
I was listening to King's speech the other day about sleeping through a revolution.
Oh, boy.
About old Rip Van Winkle going up that 20 years. King George was in, came out, he wondered, who's this other George guy? George Washington, Rip, you were snoring up a storm. British lost America. But look, we got to keep making noise, put the pressure on. We need to find out who we know in Arizona. And there are plenty of folks that we know, black, white, brown, Native American, and the same for the state of West Virginia. And then after we fight this as hard as we can, then we're going to have to figure out the workaround on whatever happens. I still think that's a sliver of hope that we're going to get something passed. Look, maybe I'm wrong. I think Senator Manchin, the only statewide Democrat in that state, having been in the legislature, may have been in county government, worked his way up, governor, and then a U.S. senator. I hope that Senator Sinema, who is much more in some ways of a wild card, a lot more difficult to predict, but I'm hoping she will do what Senator Manchin does. And if at the last point, after they've gone through this exercise, sometimes we do that in politics, that he will do the right thing once he is convinced, hey, look, I tried the bipartisan route. I think he wants to run for the U.S. Senate again, only Democrat in that state. That's why I'm hoping he's your father, Reverend Jackson, is talking to him, and I'm sure behind closed doors they're saying, now, look, what is it you need? I mean, so say what you are for, and it's not going to get bipartisan support. They are in that box, the Republicans, some of the same Republicans who voted to reenact the Voting Rights Act before. And the only reason you have to do that is because of a right-wing Supreme Court. Unfortunately, in our system, we operate under that set of rules, and we give that power to the Supreme Court. But they're saying, hey, it's outdated. You got to go do it again. Give me a break. I think he's going to vote for something, not everything that I want, not everything we want. Mm-hmm. But I hope with 50 votes, and maybe they're going to pick up 2 Republicans. I don't know if they get shaved a bit. That's why the public pressure is important. And then after it's all over with, when it's all said and done, whatever Senator Biden, Vice President Harris can get, they got to fight as hard as they can. I believe they will fight as hard as they can. Then we got to operate under those rules. So that means that if we can't do the things that we did here in Harris County, a lot of the state legislation in Texas is geared at us. I mean, look, we made it as easy to vote. One Republican said it's as easy to vote as it is to go to the grocery store. Well, why shouldn't it be as easy? Of course, he said go to the grocery store. Some people have to have groceries picked up for them. It's not by Uber Eats. It's grandmother, grandfather, it's a church. You know what I mean? It's a hospital picking up the food for them. But then we got to fight under those rules that are given to us. And then on redistricting, if we don't get some version of an independent commission, look, we got to do a workaround. And if it means that we got to work harder to get more people registered to vote, look, this state, Texas, as an example, we haven't really been a red state for a long time. I think it was Beto's line. This is a blue state that does not vote. And, we were a majority-minority state, the 4th one in the country. I think there are about 6 or 7 that are minority now. That's what the whole country will be. But at the end of the day, look, we're going to fight as hard as we can. This filibuster in the Texas Senate helps. It puts a spotlight on us. Telling my staff the other day, let's start figuring out, before they pass a bill, how many of these mail-in ballot applications can we put out now? You got me? Instead of me using my budget to go send something out, on a bicycle, showing, putting those old pictures up when I was thinner, why would we do that? What can we do now? And in other places, look, there's an urgency to act because if some of these draconian measures can be required to be pre-cleared, then you can strike them down. If they take too long, then you don't have pre-clearance. That means it's more important to have something that says, yes, you can do drive-by voting. Why not send a mail-in ballot to everybody? You let anybody in the military across the oceans vote electronically. That's less secure than some old person, a young person who could be eligible getting a mail-in ballot. But we're going to have to operate under the rules that end up in effect. And if it's tougher, we're just going to have to figure out how to do it. How did Dr. King, with that Montgomery bus program, how did they figure out how to go get folks to drive folks around, to shut down that bus system? So we fight as hard as we can, and we just have to work around it.
We are going to have to work around it. But sleeping through the revolution, Commissioner, is sometimes I'm wondering, when are we going to sound the alarms? How do we do that? To me, that's something that really, really needs to happen, because I don't know if
it's so much harder, Santita, now because there's so many mediums.
Okay.
Even as we have more media outlets of our own, like your show, Twitter, and Facebook, there's so much clutter out there. Yeah. You got me?
Yeah, I do.
It's so hard to get us on the ground the way your father motivated folks in the past. But we got to keep working at it. We don't stop. We keep going. Put it this way, no matter how hard it is, we don't have it as bad as our ancestors in the bottom of those ships coming over here.
Oh my gosh, we don't have it as hard. Well, Dave Daly, the author of Rat Aft, Why Your Vote Doesn't Count. And he really wants you to know that your vote does count, but there are people who are working to make it not count. Unrigged. He shows you how we're battling back to save our democracy. Dave, your closing thoughts.
Listen, I certainly agree with the commissioner that we don't have any option but to keep fighting and to keep fighting harder and to adopt to whatever rules are given. But I think it is really difficult to out-organize and out-register voter suppression and extreme partisan gerrymandering. And it's not, when that is the strategy that the White House offers, when that is the strategy that the White House puts forth, well, we're going to have to do more fundraising and more voter registration, and we're going to have to out-organize the partisan gerrymandering. They're not looking at what's happened in the last decade, in which you've fundamentally not been able to do that. You know, Democratic candidates won 1.4 million more votes for the U.S. House back in 2012. Republicans won 33 more seats. And that was the end, effectively, of Barack Obama's legislative agenda when Republicans managed to hold on to the House in 2012, even though a majority of voters voted for Democrats. After the 2018 election, there were 59 million Americans, almost 1 in 6 of us, that lived in a state in which the party, in which one or both chambers of the state legislature was controlled by the party that won fewer votes in the 2018 election. And all 59 million of those people lived in states where Democratic candidates won more votes and Republicans gerrymandered themselves into power. In Wisconsin in 2018, 203,000 more votes for Democratic candidates, and Republicans hold a 63-36 advantage in the state assembly. You can't out-organize that. Pennsylvania in 2018, about 315,000 more votes statewide for Democratic candidates. Republicans held huge advantages in the state house anyway. When voters are cracked and packed into specific districts as they are, when they're gerrymandered, you can out-organize and you can out-register and you can turn people out to vote. And what that might do is it might increase your majorities only in the handful of districts that Republicans have allowed you to have in the first place. Those other seats remain uncompetitive. So we can't give up, and we have to keep fighting. And I think the fact that your father, Reverend Jackson, is still in the streets and getting arrested and marching in the Arizona heat at this point in his life and in our history ought to inspire all of us to get out and do this work. But it is urgent that in this moment we do something to try to pass a federal law, as the commissioner said, that, as Attorney Hoffler said, that would do so much to reverse these insidious suppression efforts that are happening in state legislatures around the country right now, in this country, 2021.
Everybody,
I think
I got 20 seconds and they belong to you, Commissioner.
I think we're on the same page. I think they better do what LBJ did if I were the White House. So out of an infrastructure bill, if you won't vote to end voter suppression, I call it pencil whipping. Call it a computer whipping. You wouldn't get a damn bridge built. That's what he did. I mean, you had a whole lot of stuff getting built in places where people got on the program. And if you're off the program, you go broke. You don't get this infrastructure stuff. That's what Republicans do, play hardball. That's how you get the votes. I'm just saying after all that is done, and then if you don't get it, cut the hell out of them. Whatever they need. No Medicaid waiver. You
Amen.
Give them hell. That's what I do.
Boom. To be with you tomorrow. Let's You know what?
It's still cool out here. I think I might go hop on my bike. I'm gonna send you a picture.
Please
I
do.
put that spandex on like your brother. If he's spandex with my little legs.
You have Jonathan out here every time he does on the bike.
Look, you just tell him. I told him to leave those clips and all that stuff out. He's not Major Taylor. What's wrong with him? I told him, you too old, man. You fall over. You don't get to be my age. Stop it. I love you anytime. All right, I'm going to call Jonathan. I'm about to get on this bike.
You're there.
All right.
Dave Daly.
Thank you.
While you are on the parent run, thank you for making time for us today.
Oh, of course, no worries at all. I'm heading home now.
Oh, bless your heart, because there's so much going on. I don't want us to miss this. You know what? What unsettles me, I'm still on Facebook, just so that you know, is that I think we're going to get up to 2022. People are going to find out that they've been purged from the voter rolls. People are going to get to the polls, and there will be one open or their poll will be closed. So the laws have been changed, and they're being changed as we speak. They're not changing; they're being changed, and we're not going to know what is going on until Election Day, and it'll be too late. It'll be too late.
It's going to be ugly.
It'll be ugly.
It's going to be ugly.
So
And as we know, in some of these states, they're super close. So you skim a few hundred people here, you skim a few hundred there, it adds up to the 10,000 you need to flip a state.
Gavin Newsom is perilously close to losing his seat in California.
That is a fascinating case.
He won. He's a popularly elected governor and all of that, but many Democrats at this point, it's not a presidential election year. Many of them are saying, I don't know if I'm going to vote. I mean, if you look at the man on the street interviews, the man and woman on the street interviews, and you take them seriously, and I do, a lot of people are just not into the election. They don't care.
Yeah.
Guess what?
I mean, imagine if Dianne Feinstein died.
Oh, wow. And how old is she? She's almost 90 now, right?
She's almost 90 years old.
Yeah.
If she dies, you'd have a Republican appointing.
In California.
And it would make Mitch majority leader.
Absolutely. I mean, he is this close to being the leader again. He's this close. The Republicans are this close to taking over the House. This close.
The House is gone. Yeah, I think the House is gone.
You think the House is gone?
Yeah, I don't see how they hold the House. It's almost impossible to imagine how they hold the House.
Wow.
But the Senate is going to be really close. But Mitch could take the Senate. If they kick Newsom out and replace him with one of those Republicans, and Feinstein dies in the next year and a half, or resigns, or anything happens, it becomes a 51-49 Senate, and Mitch is back in charge. Back in charge now, and I mean, you see what, I mean, these things happen. I mean, RBG dies, right, 5 weeks before the election. It's not, this is not some wackadoodle scenario.
No, it's not. Look, wait a minute. They came on, last week we talked about President Trump being the Speaker of the House.
Oh, I think if Republicans win the House, I don't think it's any guarantee it's Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I think it very, very well could be Speaker Donald Trump. You don't have to be a member of the House to be Speaker of the House. The party chooses who that is.
You could be homeless, and they could choose you to be the Speaker of the House. Not that you wouldn't deserve to be, but I'm just saying there are no rules there. And we need to, I don't want you to sleep on this, you all. Don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on it. Get rat-effed Why Your Vote Doesn't Count. You really need to read this book. First of all, it's beautifully written, David Daly. And, it's like you sound like a super sleuth. It's like a mystery novel, but it's real life. It is the plan that has been put in place that we're seeing acted out right now for Republicans, for the right wing to overtake the levers of power in all governmental bodies at the state and local and even the federal levels. They control everything. And unrigged, how we're battling back to save democracy. You need to read those because they're both very hopeful. First of all, you need to understand, Dr. King said, evil men plot, therefore good men must plan. That's it. That's it. You gotta be involved, everybody. You gotta get involved. You gotta get involved. And David Daley just said, hey, the House, I think it's gone. Oh my gosh. Oy. Whew. That's painful. The thought is painful. It'll make that work even more difficult. Think about the infrastructure plan. Think about the money that you need for Wi-Fi. Our children were not in school for more than a year. Many of them could not learn remotely because their parents didn't have Wi-Fi. That's what's in the infrastructure bill, because that's part of your infrastructure. If you are not connected on the internet, you are not in the world today. So think about that, everybody, and please get involved. Medi, sending you much love. Dave, my brother from the north, and Vicky, and oh my goodness, and Tim, and there was a TMA, you said, and Vicky, and all of you, Barbara Bacon, I'm sending you all much love. I'm going to get on out of here. I want to thank Dwight McKee for being with me today, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, and Dr. Deborah Holden, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Dave Daly, always sending you all much love. Thank you, Paul, for a great show, everybody. Love you, love you, love you. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.